and used the assistance of Senator McFadden. It says in subsection C-1 that the ordinance establishes the district and the authority shall specify the name for the district and the authority. So this legislation, contrary to the statement of Forest City Vice President Scott Leviton, does give EBDI the ability to specify the name of the district. I find this to be highly problematic because at their discretion, they may change the name and will have the legal authority to do so. I might add that this bill was brought before the General Assembly without consultation with the community. If you turn on page 5, something even more deeply disturbing perhaps is listed there. In subsection F, number 2, at the bottom of the page, it says each voting member of the board, and it's underlined, each voting member of the board shall be an owner, or when the owner is a corporation, limited liability company, partnership, trust, or any other legal entity, representatives of owners or of properties in the district that are subject to district taxes under this section. In other words, this bill said that only property owners could sit on a board of directors. And you can look at the beginning of the packet that I gave you. This is an opinion written by the Attorney General, Assistant Attorney General, Catherine Rowe. She says on the 4th page of her opinion that these sorts of restrictions, where you only allow property owners to be on a board of directors, she characterizes it as unconstitutional. And then if you read the last full paragraph, the first full sentence, she says, it is my view that a position on the board of directors for the authority is public service for which a person has the right to be considered without the burden of invidious discrimination. So here we have written proof of EBDI's intent to discriminate against people who live in the footprint. And this is highly maddening to me, that they would sit here and give this rhetoric about resident inclusion, and yet they pushed a bill at the state Senate level that would invite invidious discrimination in this community. So EBDI, that's only one example. Here at the City Council level, they pushed legislation. I believe there's a bill 110692, if I'm not mistaken, about non-conforming use. They didn't consult with the community before bringing this bill for UDART, and now it's going before City Council for the first hearing. They didn't consult us. And that's a big problem with the way EBDI operates. Then there's the issue of demolition. Chris Shea mentioned protocols. Well, they don't follow the protocols. They engage in demolition without concern for the safety of people. October the 11th, they held a meeting at Micah. Dennis Miller promised, or residents stated, that we wanted a public health and environmental report. Residents stated that we wanted rodent traps placed around the perimeter of the demolition site and within the streets of that site. Residents also stated that we wanted air quality monitors set up around the site. And Executive Vice President Dennis Miller also stated that the demolition would be wetted down so that it wouldn't kick up dust, perhaps including lead and asbestos in the air. Lo and behold, October the 18th, we walk around the corner, and what we see and witness is demolition. As a matter of fact, you've seen, gentlemen, council members here, as it states in the daily record, and it's also included in the packet I've given you, where EBDI CEO says that work at the school is preparation, not demolition. Well, when we went there, we thought what we saw was demolition. When you went there, you said it was demolition. How did EBDI do this without consulting with the community? When we went there, there were no air quality monitors set up. There were no rodent boxes set up. There were no, even the fence wasn't enclosed and children could have walked in. And the road we saw wasn't even wetted down. That's why I was able to walk up on the site and take pictures, because it wasn't wet down. So EBDI, they have this pattern of promising one thing and then delivering another. Now, what's even perhaps worse than that is that we tried to have a meeting about this issue. Lo and behold, as the daily record reports, EBDI head walks out of City Hall. council members, and they walked out. And yet they sit here and talk about how they want to engage in this transparent process. They're talking about that thankfully they want to be held accountable. Well, they don't want to be held accountable. When they walk out of meetings and he says, and I'm talking about Chris Shea, I have no interest in participating in a public meeting. Now, how are you going to have transparency if you are afraid of the media showing up and reporting on what is going on? That's unfortunately another lie. The third issue we have with EBDI is that the decision-making apparatus is non-democratic. There are no resident assigned seats. I hear there's an effort to maybe appoint 1 or 2 residents onto this EBDI board, but that's now 10 years, 11 years into the process. And I would argue that over half of that board should be composed of residents, former and remaining Middle East residents. There are no residents who serve as executive officers. Chris Shea serves as both president and CEO. Cut his check in half, he can be the CEO, but let one of the residents serve as the president of EBDI. The fourth issue we have with EBDI, they conducted these surveys that purported to obtain the input from a broad array of folks in the community. Well, what we saw often when we asked for the survey, it took a long time to get them to us. And I will tell you that the surveys, there's a problem with the methodology because no residents were involved in helping to construct the survey. No residents were involved, to my knowledge, in terms of implementing or administering the survey. And so this becomes a real issue. Then they have these relocation satisfaction surveys. And so EBDI is asking folks, are you satisfied with the relocation package that we've offered you, that we've given you, the process that we've been engaged in, blah, blah, blah. Now, I would argue as a researcher that there's a real interviewer bias. The very same people who conducted the relocating are now asking you, are you satisfied? In their economic inclusion piece, they have a third-party monitor. Her name is Andrew Jackson, and she's an independent, supposedly independent person to help monitor the economic progress of EBDI. Why do we not have an independent research team to understand whether or not people are really satisfied with EBDI? Not only that, in the surveys, less than 60% of the people responded to the surveys. So even if they claim that 95% of the people are happy, well, there's a good 40% plus percentage of folks who haven't even responded. They could be extremely dissatisfied. So the survey methodology is a real issue. And there's these issues with conflict of interest in terms of who is conducting these surveys. Then, as Brother Jermaine Jones mentioned, the project has only created 700 plus jobs. When this thing was announced, they said thousands of jobs will be created. They promised a biotech park. And they said, oh, this whole thing is going to be really fancy. But yet people are struggling and out of work. And they haven't built the biotech park they promised. They haven't created the thousands of jobs they promised. People go in for jobs and they're being told that the list is full. They're told to sign a sheet and we'll get back with you, and nobody gets back with them. I also mentioned that instead of saying that 11 zip codes should be the area where EBDI will draw residents from, there should be first a radius drawn around the footprint. And maybe it only goes 5, 6, 7, 8 blocks wide. But pull residents out of there first before you go to a larger 11 zip code area. Then we can ensure that the people who live around the project area are able to obtain employment from this $1.8 billion project. That's $1,800 million. Then EBDI is building this school. But in their rush to do so, they neglected the health and consideration of residents. According to the Baltimore Department, the Department of Transportation, they state that in Baltimore City Ordinance 06-345, that a traffic impact study may be required in order to evaluate a proposed development project impact on the surrounding transportation network and communities. And it also states that it is required for any proposed development greater than 15,000 square feet of gross area. The school is 100,000 feet of gross area. Why did they not go to the Department of Transportation and ask for and pay for a traffic impact study? Not only that, they didn't go to the health department and say, we want you to conduct a health impact assessment of what the likely impact of demolition will be on residents. So EBDI, again, they make these promises, they give these glossy presentations, but then when we look underneath the cover, they're taking all kinds of shortcuts as it relates to people's health and engaging the full apparatus of city government to make sure that the rights of the people are protected. The seventh issue, Forest City developed a master plan, but did not include any residents in the design of the master plan. Council members, they're on the third master plan. The third master plan. How many times do you need to design a master plan? I would argue that if you pick the residents in this room right here, pick 10 of them, they can design a better master plan than Forest City. And I don't say that just to be slight. I say that because residents know the community. And in spite of the challenges that I've mentioned, in spite of these issues, residents have successfully put together a community benefits agreement, which is the last document that I've handed out. We put together a community benefits agreement that broadens the impact of the master plan. It includes critical elements to enhance community life and protect residents from one critical issue, and that is residents being priced out of this development. So we're talking about capping taxation. If EBDI can go before the General Assembly and pass legislation that is characterized as invidious discrimination, then we want EBDI to lobby for residents and pass legislation that will cap their taxes so that people will not be priced out of their community. So these are some of the administrative and implementation issues that we have with EBDI. Again, $212.6 million of our public money has been used in this project. Over and over again, EBDI promises certain things, then they flat out lie to us in many instances, turn around and do stuff behind our backs. And this is unacceptable. This is the United States of America. We claim to be a democracy. EBDI does not live by the principles that we espouse in this country. We demand that the citizens' rights are upheld and preserved. Change